All right, listen up. Today's lesson is going to go a little deeper. We're not talking about just raw power or how to swing a blade. We're diving into the metaphysics of combat, the real stuff that lets warriors fuse their very wills on the battlefield. So pay attention. This is your masterclass on dual and delta techniques.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want you to think about something. What if your greatest weapon wasn't the strength in your arm, or how much joki, your life energy you can pump out? What if it's the connection you have with the warrior standing right next to you, the unification of your wills? That is the real secret to the power we're about to talk about.
You see, the whole foundation of fighting as a team, of true synchronized combat, it all boils down to one single, crucial concept, the principle of wavelength. If you can wrap your head around this, everything else will just click into place. So, your wavelength, it's more than just your element. Think of it as your joki's unique signature. It's shaped by every fight you've ever won, every loss you've endured, every single experience. And that means a seasoned warrior, someone who's really been through it, can actually learn to vary their wavelength, to adapt it. And that ability to sync up with others, that is a massive tactical advantage. This brings us to a core truth, something Masterkin himself taught us. Your joki isn't just some energy you command. It is your will, given form. It's your intention, your emotions, your very spirit pushed out into the world. You have to remember that. So, here's the takeaway. If joki is will, then fusing your joki with a teammate, well, you're literally fusing your wills. And that's not something you can learn from drills. No way. It takes a deep, profound trust and empathy. A bond so strong that two people can think and act as a single unit. That is the source of all these powerful techniques.
Okay, so now that we've got the principle down, let's look at how it actually works in a fight. How does this whole fusion of wills really show up when things get messy? This is where we get into dual and delta type techniques.
Now, the difference seems pretty simple on the surface, right? A dual type is a fusion of two warriors. That's powerful, no doubt. But a delta type, we're talking 3 or more. And it's not just adding more power, it's an exponential leap. You can create these incredibly complex layered effects that can change the entire battlefield. But it requires a level of shared will and affinity that is just almost impossible to achieve.
Fusions aren't just about making things bigger either. It's about how the powers interact. There are really 3 ways this can go. First, you have amplification. It's the most basic. Think of wind feeding a fire. You get a much bigger, more destructive flame. Simple. Then there's transformation. This is where it gets more like alchemy. You take 2 elements, like earth and fire, and they don't just add together. They create something brand new, molten joki. Finally, the most complex one, the catalyst. Here, one element doesn't even combine. It just kicks off a massive reaction in others. A bit of heat hitting water and air in just the right way, and bam, you've got a storm on your hands. Knowing which one to use when, that's what separates the pros from the amateurs.
Theory is one thing, but seeing it in action, under pressure, that's another story entirely. So let's break down a real combat situation that shows these principles in the most extreme way possible.
So here's the puzzle. You're facing William Phoenix. He's invisible, and he's moving faster than you can possibly react. Hozik can sense him, match his speed even, but he doesn't have the raw power to finish the fight. Byrne has the power, but to her, William is just a ghost. So how do you beat an enemy you literally can't hit?
What they did was nothing short of a tactical masterstroke. First, Hozak doesn't even try to keep up. He changes the battlefield itself, throwing up his labyrinth technique to create these shifting energy walls that mess with William's movement. Second, and this is the absolute key, Bjorn syncs her will completely with Hozak's. She attunes her wavelength to his defensive field, the zone of absolute defense. And finally, with her eyes closed, Bjorn just feels it. She senses the exact moment William's presence disrupts that zone, and she channels her attack through Hozek's field to nail the target. She didn't need to see him, she felt him through their shared will.
And listen to Byrne's own words. It's right there. Perfect synchronization gave her a kind of sight that has nothing to do with eyes. She became an extension of Hozek's defense. She wasn't just sensing a disturbance, she was the counterattack. That, right there, is the power of a fused will.
This whole case study really leads us to a much bigger strategic idea. You see, the greatest warriors, they don't just fight on the battlefield, they control it.
And that is the whole point of terrain alteration. These are advanced support class techniques that require a team to basically reshape the environment of the fight. It's like creating your own home field advantage anywhere, anytime.
Now, terrain alteration usually falls into two buckets. First, you've got debilitating terrain. This is all about messing with your opponent, turning the ground to mud, that kind of thing. It's powerful, but it's risky. You misuse it, and you could end up hurting your own people. Then you have enhancing terrain, which is the opposite. It's about boosting your allies, maybe creating updrafts for your flame users. Not only does this make your whole team stronger, it's also the perfect counter to an enemy's debilitating moves.
So let's go back to Hozek's zone of absolute defense for a second. This is what true mastery looks like, because it does both things at once. On its own, it's a debilitating technique that slows down William. But the second Buggern syncs up with it, it transforms into an enhancing technique. It becomes the very channel that guides and empowers her attack. That is how you control a fight.
So how do you actually apply all this? How do you take this knowledge and turn it into a win? Let's put together a tactical framework.
When you're on the receiving end of a debilitating terrain, you don't panic. You follow this process. First, awareness. You just have to recognize that the battlefield itself has become a weapon against you. Second, analysis. What's the target? Are they changing the physical ground, or is it something more subtle, like an attack on your team's morale? And finally, counteraction. You respond with an enhancing technique of your own. They freeze the ground, you melt it. They try to break your team's spirit, you use a technique to bolster everyone's will. You neutralize their advantage, and then you take your own.
And that brings us right back to where he started. All these advanced tactics, fusions, terrain control, synchronized attacks, they all come from the exact same place. It's not about brute strength. It's about the trust between warriors. That emotional, that psychological bond, that's the forge where real power is made, where multiple wills can become one single, unstoppable force.
I'll leave you with this one thought. We've established that your Joki is your will made real. It allows you to fuse with your allies, to change the very ground you fight on. So I'll ask you this. If your will can literally shape reality, what is the true limit of your power? Think on that. Class dismissed.